welcome to the Inside Tech podcast. Today we are talking about the wireless charging, and we have a guest here. It's Martin Beaumont from the Electric Green. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Carrie. It's good to be here, and many thanks for inviting me.
Maybe we can start with a short introduction. Maybe you can introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, sure. My name's Martin Beaumont. I've been running Electric Green for the last 2 years. My background is in various medical telecoms sectors. I worked for Motorola doing network infrastructure, and then I've latterly been investing in various businesses. And I was introduced to Electric Green a couple of years ago to see if I could turn an invention into a commercial reality, and that's what we're doing right now.
That's very interesting to talk more about the Electric Green and the wireless charging. But yeah, first I think Rika has a small brief about for our listeners, what is the wireless charging about?
Yes, wireless charging or induction charging is a technology that's about to change the way we drive electric vehicles. It's not yet in the mainstream market, but it's picking up speed really quickly with a booming 56% growth rate, according to the market research firm Next Move Strategy Consulting. Wireless charging is expected to offer a lot of convenience. The big selling point is the hassle-free charging, of course. You just park your car and it will charge without plugging in. This could make electric cars more appealing and lead to higher adoption rate. But this technology is expensive and probably more complicated to deploy due to standardization, compatibility, and also interoperability issues. But I believe Martin here and Electric Green is about to change that.
I hope so too.
Maybe we can you can tell a little bit us about Electric Green, what you guys are exactly doing in the wireless charging.
Electric Green is a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called Enotechnos Holdings, and Enotechnos were established about 10 years ago with a focus on improving the efficiency of energy grid. They done this by exploiting some technology that was being assessed by Brunel University, and that technology is called the Capacitive Transfer System, or CTS for short. And what it is it's a cable where they split the copper core into two poles, and they reduce the impedance of distributing and transmitting power by putting it into one of the poles and taking out of the other one. Now, it sounds kind of counterintuitive to do so. What it actually means is they were able to send power over longer distance with a minimal voltage drop. So to the layman, what does that mean? It means you can deliver using CTS the same power but with less copper in the cables, or you can use the same copper and deliver more power. So the focus of the business at that stage, and to a large extent now, was on grids and distribution networks, so 50 and 60 kilohertz. And what the company discovered is that while they were testing, they used higher frequency as a substitute for longer cables, and they discovered that they could also efficiently send higher frequency power from A to B down the CTS cable. Now, the higher the frequency, the more pronounced the advantages are. So they looked at wireless charging, which has an operating frequency of 85 kilohertz, or at least that's what's agreed in the standards for charging electric vehicles. And they said, well, hang on, we can send 85 kilohertz up to 20 times further than a traditional wireless charging company using LITS cables. So I got involved with Electric Green to look at how we could exploit that capability. And what it enables us to do is so because we didn't have the constraints on distributing the power over longer distances, Electric Green were able to develop a charging architecture where we had a centralized power supply and a common CTS backbone, and then multiple pads coming off the back of it. So as an example, if we had 220 kilowatt converter, we can supply 20 ground pads at 11 kilowatts. So the big advantage over our competition here is that we get economies of scale in deploying that architecture. So with traditional LITS cable, which is used for wireless charging, the maximum distance you can put the pad away from the charger is about 6.5 meters. Now, that means you're stuck with a one charger, one ground pad relationship. And that's not something we have an issue with CTS cable on our backbone. So The output of that is economies of scale, greatly reduced cost per charging space, and an ability to deploy wireless charging infrastructure at scale and very quickly.
Been talking with a lot of EV experts and the people working in the industry, and wireless charging is something many people are very skeptic because of the some of the challenges you are solving at the moment, and then also like kind of the efficiency, how much of the loss in the charging and so on. In what kind of scenarios you think the wireless charging will be the best option?
That's a good question. And on the face of it, wireless charging has many, many benefits over plugging in. I mean, my take on it is, to date, plugging in is okay. It's enabled, some initial wireless adoption, but it could just be so much better. And I think consumers deserve a better charging experience. If you look at figures from Bloomberg's economic transition model versus the net zero model that they compare, what the world is trying to focus on achieving, net zero by 2050 compared to Bloomberg's economic transition model is about 30% ahead. And the message here is that Bloomberg think that we are going to struggle to reach net zero, and we're probably going to come up 30% shy. So wireless charging is one of the ways to increase EV adoption. And if you look at the way consumers behave, they generally, where there's a wireless adoption, they will take it up. So, for example, nobody's plugging in their laptop now to get Wi-Fi access. You don't walk around your home with a phone coming out of your cable. And my favorite's probably the remote control for your TV. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember when you had to get up and actually change the channel. And now everybody does it by remotely. And if you tried to sell a TV without a remote, you'd have a big issue with it. And I think wireless charging of vehicles is going to follow a similar pathway. So for owners, you've got no dirty cables, you've got fewer breakages, there's no trip hazards. You can use it to top up your battery rather than letting it run down, a bit like you do with your mobile phone. Wireless makes EVs accessible for everybody. So if you've got mobility issues at the moment, getting out of your vehicle and plugging in a heavy cable is not easy. So those are kind of consumer benefits from wireless. And then for fleet operations, wireless brings new benefits as well. It kind of embeds charging into the everyday activity of the business, and it doesn't distract it, and it doesn't make it less efficient. So you don't have operatives being put at a higher safety risk by moving around vehicles in depots. Rental leasing companies, they are going to be able to connect their vehicles effectively without having to have people plugging in. Everything will become more efficient. And this ease of contact, if you like, with the charging infrastructure that wireless enables means you can get things like opportunity charging, where taxis can charge up while they're waiting in taxi ranks. Ambulances can charge up while they're waiting in queues at hospitals. So it enables sort of efficient operation of businesses, as well as offering advantages to consumers. All of those benefits kind of apply to all wireless charging. But I think the key for us at Electric Green is we've tried to focus on reducing the cost of all of these activities, because as you say, wireless is perceived to be a lot more expensive, and in a lot of instances it is more expensive if you do a one-to-one charging infrastructure. But what we're able to do at Electric Green is have a one-to-many charging infrastructure, and we estimate we can get about a 61% reduction on the cost from the vehicle side, and a 45% reduction for the ground infrastructure side. So we're tackling that cost issue head on.
Yes, so we talk a bit about the technology, but what about your area of business? Where are you operating? And also probably who are your consumers? I think you talked already about ambulance and emergency vehicles, but who else are your customers?
Okay, so at the moment, Electric Green is a pre-revenue business. We are still developing the technology. Our solution is focused on both fleets and consumers, but we think fleet areas are going to adopt wireless sooner than the general public. So we are looking predominantly at return to depot fleets, and we're doing a lot of work with Royal Mail, which I can talk about in more detail. And we're also looking at rental and leasing companies, such as hire car companies, where they have huge numbers of vehicles located in the same place. So if you look at airports, for example, there's one vehicle company that has 2 million vehicles worldwide, but 30,000 of those, for example, are at Atlanta Airport. And that is a lot of vehicles to connect with plugging in and unplugging. So those kind of areas we think are a really good focal point for wireless charging.
Are you targeting the UK market only for now, or are you expanding to other markets also?
No, we've got an international offering, Rika. The key to the adoption of wireless is going to be scale, and therefore only looking at one particular geographic market isn't going to get it off the ground and widely adopted. There are lots of examples of retrofitted wireless charging projects which kind of prove the principle. But the challenge here is they are quite expensive to retrofit, and they're complex, and you need OEM integration and assistance to do so. So factory fitting of wireless is key to its widespread adoption. And we think there are some activities going on at the moment that are demonstrating that is coming. The big one, of course, was Tesla's acquisition of a German wireless charging company called Wi-Fi earlier this year. And I think if wireless charging is adopted by Tesla, the market tends to follow where Tesla go first. So, for example, very quickly, non-wireless option vehicles will start to look a little bit dated if Tesla charge ahead and introduce it. But there are reasons why OEMs haven't done so. It's well known OEMs are very focused on areas like cost, efficiency of operation, and interoperability is very important. On the cost side, OEMs don't want extra weight. They're concerned about thermal management, etc. And so any wireless system needs to satisfy these concerns. And Electric Green are very focused on intelligent design and IP protected inventions in this area. For example, we have an OBC design. OBC is onboard charger, where we are able to take feeds from plug-in AC, wireless AC, and wireless DC from other manufacturers into a single component, and in that way we reduce duplication of power electronics on board, and we make it easy for the OEMs to integrate our solution or a wireless solution into their platforms. One of the other areas is efficiency, and wireless has historically been seen as being less efficient than plug-in, and in reality there's about a 1% loss across the air gap from charging and discharging wirelessly. Now, I think consumers and manufacturers will take that, given all of the other convenience, etc., benefits associated with wireless charging. And then the other thing we're looking to do is introduce our CTS technology into the coils themselves. So wireless power transfer work by making a magnetic field from the ground side, and that is then picked up by the vehicle side. And alignment of those two fields is very important. And we think CTS coils will improve alignment and make it kind of easier for consumers to use and get a positive output from that. And then the third area OEMs are really interested in is interoperability, because of course at the moment if you plug in, you've got CCS or CHAdeMO systems and the cables work, or you've got Tesla's system over in the US. And what has to happen for wireless to be adopted is company A's ground pad has to work with company B's car pad. Therefore, locating a lot of the technology in the ground and less so on the vehicle means it's easier for OEMs to wirelessly equip their vehicles. So that's another thing Electric Green are focused on.
Yeah, you mentioned like the economies of scale later on when the wireless chargers start to be on the production and so on, and the technology of course makes it cheaper in the long run. How long you think it takes before I could, for example, there would be a reasonable alternative for me to have in my house a wireless charger in my parking place? Or is that even reality that at homes you would use the wireless charger?
I think homes will start to have wireless charging options relatively soon. You can actually now go and retrofit wireless charging onto your vehicle. But as I said, the challenge is it's extremely expensive to do so. I think the first wireless charging option from an OEM that is factory fitted is probably going to come out late 2024, early 2025. And again, if Tesla bring it out, they could potentially bring that out in 2025. So I think fairly soon you will be seeing the early adopters of wireless charging, having these systems in their houses. Definitely.
So I guess running business is not always so smooth. What would you say the biggest challenges faced by Electric Green and by the wireless industry in general?
Oh, that's a good question, Rika. Well, obviously things run very smoothly at Electric Green.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, but outside that, there are some factors influencing us in our environment that are trickier to deal with. I won't lie about that. I think OEM interfacing with OEMs is the hardest thing. OEMs have an awful lot on their plate at the moment with the transition to electrification. Full stop. Coming along to them with a system that is slightly different. However, even though it's better, it is slightly different from the route they're going down at the moment. And they are so focused on trying to electrify that it's almost a distraction at the moment. So trying to get time with the OEMs, persuade them that this is what's coming and this is what consumers want is the challenge. And how do we do that? We do that by having demonstrator projects to show them what it can do and generate feedback from those projects. I'll give you an example. We are doing a government-backed grant with Royal Mail, which we're deploying next October. And Royal Mail deliver the post in the UK. They are the largest last mile fleet. They have about 38,000 delivery vans, LCVs, and they have a big issue electrifying. They can't have cables around the vehicles because there's a lot of staff movement. They don't want to have what we call depot furniture at the back of each van because it just gets in the way. So they don't want charging posts, etc. But what they do like is Electric Green's solution, where we can put the charger around the corner, totally out of the way, and have simply wireless charging there, which enables the operatives to carry on their day-to-day work safely with no obstructions. And in fact, that project is a bi-directional project as well. So we're looking to demonstrate with their batteries in their fleet, Royal Mail can generate significant additional revenue from what is effectively a virtual power plant. And then we take that feedback and we say to OEMs, this is what your customers are looking for. And that's how we persuade them generally that wireless is the way forward. I also think, in addition to that market share is going to become a big issue going forward. At the moment, everybody's electrifying kind of generally at a similar rate, and that'll probably continue for the next 5 years. But then if you want to get ahead and have innovation in your product offering, then wireless is going to enable you to do that. And I think if it's cost effective enough, there aren't many consumers that are going to say, oh, do you know what? I don't fancy this easy to use wireless system. Please give me the plug-in option again. So I think they're going to start to see the light, but they've just got a lot on their plate at the moment.
Topic like compatibility and interoperability, there starts to be standards and so on. Different automotive manufacturers, when they bring the capability, the production, it will be kind of defined already that there's no different chargers, like the plug-in chargers have several different plugs and standards necessary. But what I'm wondering, like their operability, how in the kind of the payment issues, kind of like now in the plug-in, I would love if all the plug-in chargers would work like the Tesla supercharger, that you just plug it in and it detects your car and charges your account without you doing anything in any app or anything. Does the wireless actually standards currently cover that part, or will the cars be able to communicate with the charger at all?
It's a good question, and the answer is that kind of standardization is being developed at the moment. In more detail. Some of it is already developed. So there is the SAE 2954 standard, which is the primary one covering wireless charging. What you're referring to there in terms of plug and charge is covered in the wireless sector by another standard called 15118-20. So wireless needs to keep up with the innovations that are happening around billing and payment for services in plug-in. It's just another step to make those standards appropriate for wireless charging. There are also lots of organizations such as Charin, for example, in Europe and elsewhere, who are looking to bring together all of the wireless parties so that we can do interoperability testing. Standards and theory are all very well, but in reality, you need to be able to put your system on the ground and get other people to come and drive their cars over it and check it works. And Charin are leading the charge in that area, and we're very pleased to be taking part in it as well.
In some time in the future, it could be that I just drive to the local supermarket or the office, and I don't need to worry about charging, and my car is charging while I'm leaving it in the parking place. At least in the US, they are testing a lot of autonomous vehicles already on the road. In Europe, the legislation is, of course, slowing it down a little bit. Autonomous vehicles, I think the wireless charging might be, even if you want to have a fleet of autonomous taxis, for example, wireless charging might be actually something you really need for that, right?
Oh, totally, yes. I mean, car isn't truly autonomous unless it has wireless charging, I don't believe, because if you need somebody to plug it in and unplug it, it doesn't work on its own. You know, wireless charging in the future is going to seriously drive autonomous vehicle adoption. I firmly believe that it'll reduce the requirement for human intervention. But I think in the future, there are other areas where wireless is going to assist, probably sooner than autonomous cars, because depending on where you are, the rate of adoption of autonomous vehicles is open to discussion, I think. But some areas where wireless is going to make an impact sooner, I think, is the first one around bidirectionality and this whole V2X area. So V2X isn't solely attributed to wireless, but I think where you are able to use the power in the battery and send it back to the grid or the building or indeed to another vehicle, that is going to change the business model of charging infrastructure and, frankly, electric vehicle ownership more widely. And we believe that being able to connect with that grid and make the availability of the battery asset that much easier to access using wireless technology is going to make a huge difference. So let me give an example. If you have an 80% state of charge on your vehicle, van, and you drive it into the depot, you're probably not going to plug it in if you're there for 3 hours because you don't need more power. And human nature says you generally won't be bothered. But actually, if you can just press connect and the wireless connection is made, then the opportunity to use that battery asset while you wait is that much easier. So that's going to significantly change the ownership model of vehicles, and particularly for fleets. So back to the Royal Mail example I mentioned earlier, you know, potentially each vehicle could earn up to £500 from bidirectionality per annum. If you've got nearly 38,000 depot-based vehicles, such as Royal Mail, that's almost £18 million you can generate through bidirectional charging. Now, that's significant. So I think being able to access the battery asset easily is going to be a big thing in the future.
So you're taught like anybody with a big fleet would basically enter into competition in the power market, kind of offering the electricity in the peak hours and capitalize it.
Well, completely. And, you know, there are many ways to earn revenue from the flexibility markets. And so having a good flexibility broker who can interface with a fleet is really important there. And what the wireless element of this does is make the connectivity and the availability of that battery much, much easier than just plugging in. The other area where I think wireless charging is going to really help, and in particular low cost wireless charging, is in the mass adoption and availability of charging infrastructure. I think at the moment the focus on charging is very much on speed of charging, and you know, around motorway networks, A roads, freeways, etc. You know, high-powered charging is needed, and mostly that's DC-based charging, but it's expensive, and the grid needs a lot of upgrades to provide that. Now, once those areas are covered, the focus will come more back to destination charging with longer dwell times. And I think here wireless can really help, especially Electric Green's wireless solution, because you're applying appropriate charging speeds to the user case in those scenarios. So, for example, say you've got commuters who drive into the railway station every day. They don't need much power to go from their home to the station and then back again. And their dwell time is quite long. So they don't need high power chargers to just top up their battery in the same way that you would top up your phone. So if we can scale the charging infrastructure to the user case, then it costs less, and charge point operators pay less for the infrastructure. They get a faster return on their investment, and ultimately this costs the drivers less. I think wireless will have a big impact in those destination charging areas as well. And then lastly, I think the big change that's coming, and this is going to happen slowly, but is extremely important, is scarcity of raw materials for batteries is a huge issue. And there are lots of geopolitical factors that influence the supply chain in that area as well. And with wireless charging, the opportunity charge, top up your battery while you're doing other things, means that you don't have to take time out of your day. Like the taxi driver doesn't have to lose fare revenue because they're parked up charging. They can charge up in the taxi rank while they wait for passengers. And that means that particular taxi could have a smaller battery, a plug-in vehicle, because it can do things at the same time. So I think from a continuity of supply and a cost side, opportunity charging enabled by wireless is also going to become much more important in the future.
In the general, when it comes to EV charging business, a lot of companies are currently running into capturing the market, and the competition is more about that who can capture more market. How do you see the wireless charging companies are still kind of starting to enter the market and competition? How do you see the competitive landscape for you?
I think there's room for everybody, to be honest, Carrie. Wireless charging is not available yet at scale. I think, certainly I can speak for the UK, where I believe about 2.5% of vehicles are electric at the moment. By the time wireless charging becomes available to mass market, there will still be an awful lot of the market to go for. And in fact, you could actually argue that the wireless charging will enable that market to convert, because all the people who are buying EVs at the moment and plugging in, they're probably very into the green movement. They've probably got off-street parking. They've probably got a higher disposable income than most. Once you get over these early adopters, you've got to offer a better experience to the wider market. So I'm not concerned that wireless charging is late to the market, to the party here. I think actually it's going to arrive just as the mass market are ready to install it and use it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the future now. Is there any current trends or any emerging technology that you are looking forward to? Something that you think would change or would revolutionize the market drastically?
Well, I think OEM adoption, Rika, is what's going to make the big difference here. All of those areas we covered earlier, the driverless autonomous vehicles, the scarcity of battery materials, being able to provide cheap charging infrastructure, and then this V2X bidirectionality, all of those are going to change the rate of adoption, and wireless is crucial for those. I mean, one area which is being tested at the moment is what's called dynamic wireless charging. And what Electric Green are focused on right now is static wireless charging, where the vehicles charge when they are stationary. But dynamic charging is looking at charging vehicles while they're moving. So it's otherwise known as sort of electrified roads. And that's really interesting because, if you can electrify the backbone of one lane of a highway, then again, you rapidly reduce the requirement for big batteries on the vehicles. So, some of these heavy goods vehicles are having 500-600 kilowatt hour batteries. Those things cost a lot of money. And if you can top up your battery while you're driving along, you don't need that battery size, you don't need the expense, you don't need the weight. And so dynamic wireless charging could indeed make a big difference in the future. Won't be everywhere, but in certain scenarios, it could make a big difference.
For Electric Green, how does the future plans and look? You mentioned that the OEMs are probably bringing the production the wireless charging capability in 2024, 2025. So are you expecting to go to production and start installing the chargers in the near future?
I think we'd be looking to install our charging infrastructure commercially from probably 2027. We'll be doing demonstration projects before then, starting off next year, and then rolling out some more of those probably in 2026. But I think the lead-in time at the moment for OEMs is 3 years for adopting wireless charging technology, as in we have to be engaged with them for 3 years before they bring it to the mass market. So those kind of conversations are happening at the moment. And innovation takes time to introduce. It starts off slowly and it gradually builds up. So I think as soon as you start to see pockets of good practice out there, consumers will vote with their feet or with their wallets in this case, and I think they'll be buying wireless enabled vehicles ahead of plug-in ones.
Very interesting. I definitely follow what's happening with you guys in the coming years. Thank you for coming to our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
A special offer for our listeners. We are giving you full access to statistics for 30 days by registering at statson.com with the code STATSON, spelled in uppercase STATZON. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Visit our website and get our Text 360 newsletters. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe, recommend the podcast to your colleagues, friends, and family, and follow us on social media.